The royal family was getting ready for a big event. The two princes were about to face off in a contest that would decide who would become the next king. It wasn't a fight to the death, but it would show who was stronger, more capable, and ready to lead the kingdom. As the day of the fight got closer, something terrible happened. Prince Amoli was found dead in his room, his body cold and lifeless. After being examined by the village healers, they couldn't find any signs of foul play. The death was chalked up to natural causes, and the villagers, though heartbroken, accepted it as fate. Abiodun stood among the mourners, pretending to grieve. But deep down, he felt no sadness. He had killed Amoli, poisoning his drink to remove the one thing standing between him and the throne. After Amoli was buried, he was crowned the king. It should have been a moment of triumph, but all Abiodun could focus on was how effortlessly he had claimed it. He had taken his brother's life, and now the kingdom belonged to him. Not long after his coronation, Abiodun went to see the village chief priest, a powerful man known for communicating with the oracle. He had come to find out what kind of ruler he would be. He needed to know if his reign would be as great as he hoped. The chief priest began to chant softly, and soon his voice filled the space, steady and clear. You will be a great king. You will win many battles and gain great wealth. But you will only rule for 5 years and die. Abiodun stood still, stunned. 5 years and die. The words echoed in his mind. It was not the long, prosperous reign he had imagined. His time as king would be brief, and the thought troubled him. He left the chief priest's place troubled and disappointed, but decided to enjoy his reign as king for now. After 4 years, Abiodun sat comfortably on his throne. He had everything he ever wanted: riches, land, and power. His kingdom had grown larger as he conquered more villages, and he savored every moment of his reign. Yet, despite all his success, the chief priest's words kept haunting him. You will rule for only 5 years. 5 years. Abiodun thought bitterly. After fighting so hard for the throne, the thought of losing it so soon was unbearable. He couldn't accept the idea of such a short reign. He needed more time to solidify his power, to leave a lasting legacy. King Abiodun made up his mind to seek the chief priest's counsel again. When he reached the chief priest's home, he stood outside, gathering his thoughts. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. I've come again, King Abiodun said, his voice shaking slightly. I cannot accept my fate. The time given to me is too short. Please, is there no way to change it? The chief priest slowly spoke. You ask for a way to change what is already set. But fate cannot be easily changed. There is no way to defy it, so you must accept what is to come. But I must try. King Abiodun pleaded, stepping closer. I fought so hard for this throne. I cannot lose it now, not after everything I've done. I cannot live with that, he said, his voice urgent. After a long pause, the chief priest spoke again, this time with a heavy tone. In the evil forest, there is an evil Dabaya named Isuju. He was banished years ago and may be able to help you. But his powers are dark and requires sacrifice, so whatever help he gives will come at a great price. He thanked the chief priest and returned to the palace. The next day, Abiodun went into the evil forest, and after a long walk, he finally found Isuju, the evil Dabaya. Isuju appeared, his eyes narrowing at the sight of the king. Who dares come into my domain? Isuju's voice was cold and strong. King Abiodun bowed slightly and said, I am King Abiodun. I have come seeking help. I have a year left to live, and that means my time on the throne would end. Please, tell me what I must do. Isuju raised an eyebrow. And why should I help you? King Abiodun's voice was filled with urgency. I have fought hard to become king. I cannot lose everything now. Please, I will do anything. Isuju studied him closely. Anything? Yes, anything, King Abiodun replied. Isuju smirked. I can help you, but it will not come free. I will need land and gold in return. If you agree, I can grant you more time to rule, but you will pay a heavy price. King Abiodun thought for a moment. The price was steep, but the chance to keep his throne was too important to turn down. Land and gold were within his power. He could handle the cost if it meant preserving his reign. I agree to the land and gold, King Abiodun said, his voice firm. Isuju said, his voice firm and steady. As for the sacrifice, you'll have to use your wives. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. You have 7 wives, don't you? Their lives will be given to me. Each one will die, and their life will be added to yours. Only then will you live longer. King Abiodun was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe what Isuju was saying. Although, at the back of his mind, he thought about how he had killed his brother for the throne. Could he really care about a few more lives? The thought of losing the crown was far worse than the thought of the sacrifice. Still, he decided to take some time to come to a decision. I'll need some time to think about it, King Abiodun said, his voice steady. I'll return when I've made my decision. Isuju nodded, unbothered by the king's hesitation. When King Abiodun returned to the palace, Isuju's words stayed on his mind. His wives quickly noticed his change in behavior. The once confident and commanding king now moved through the palace in silence, his face set in deep thought. They asked him what was wrong, but he dismissed their questions without a second thought, unwilling to explain himself. Abiodun had already made up his mind. The throne meant everything: power, riches, and glory. Sacrificing his wives was the only way to ensure his reign extended beyond the 5 years the oracle had foretold. Each of his wives had been loyal, standing by him and bearing his children. Yet, in his eyes, wasn't his life more important than theirs? He was the king, after all. To him, they were nothing more than a means to an end. When Abiodun returned to the evil forest, Isuju was waiting for him. It was as if he already knew the decision the king would make. The Dabaya led the king to an altar covered in blood, sacrifices and dark objects. Are you ready? Isuju asked. Abiodun nodded. He knew what he had to do. Isuju began the ritual. He made small dolls to represent each of the king's wives, and as he spoke strange words, he used knives to strike the dolls. Every time he struck a doll, one of the king's wives in the palace fell. They collapsed suddenly, their hearts failing or their bodies giving out. When it was over, all 7 of his wives were dead. Their lives had been taken and added to the king's. Abiodun did not feel any remorse. He had done what needed to be done. Back in the palace, the people were in mourning. They didn't understand why their queen's sudden deaths had happened. They were confused and sad, but the king didn't care. He was now sure that he would live for a long time. The king lived for many months after the ritual. He was still young and strong. His kingdom grew, and he ruled with an iron fist. People feared and respected him, and he had everything he wanted. But as time went on, something started to change. The king began to feel weak. He became sick and tired all the time. His body hurt, and his energy was gone. No matter what he did, he couldn't feel better. The king went to many doctors and healers. He visited villages far and wide, but no one could cure him. The sickness only grew worse, and soon, he could barely stand. One day, the king called Isusu to come to the palace. "Why is this happening to me?" the king asked. "I asked for long life, not sickness. Fix this. Heal me." Isusu looked at him with cold eyes. "You asked for long life, but not good health. You wanted time, but you didn't care about your body. The lives of your wives gave you life, but now you must live with their pain. You will suffer until you have lived as long as they did." The king realized then that Isusu had tricked him. He had thought he was getting a gift, but it was a curse. Abiodun tried everything to end his life. He ate poisonous herbs, stayed in the hot sun, and even starved himself. But nothing worked. The king grew thinner and weaker. His flesh rotted, and his skin tore open, revealing decayed flesh underneath. Worms crawled out of his wounds, feeding on his dying body. Pus oozed from his sores, and the stench of death surrounded him. He could barely move. His body was falling apart, and his mind was full of regret. He had lost everything. He had killed his brother and his wives. And for what? A throne that he couldn't enjoy. Eventually, the king called for the people of the kingdom to come to him. He confessed everything: how he had killed his brother for the throne, how he had killed his wives for long life, and the deal he had made with Isusu. The people mourned their king, but they could not forgive him. He outlived all his children and died alone, his body left to rot. His greed for power led to his downfall, and no one would remember him as a great ruler. But his actions did not only affect him. The spirits of his 7 wives remained restless, demanding justice. From that day on, every king who ruled after him had to appease their spirits. If they did not, death and misfortune would fall upon the kingdom. The curse of Abiodun's greed would haunt the throne for generations to come.